Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, East Lansing, Michigan. Outside of Spartan Stadium, Michigan State 5-5, looking to become bowl eligible on Saturday. The Indiana Hoosiers will be in town. Senior day. It's going to be cold. It's going to be below freezing. Right now, it's about 37 refreshing degrees here in East Lansing, Michigan. It's going to be 28 on Saturday. Not supposed to be any snow, but I don't know. That could change by then. So you got to wear your layers. And a big game for Michigan State to try to get bowl eligible and try to push it forward to make that Penn State game mean even more. But first things first, Michigan State will be going down to play basketball in Indianapolis against Kentucky in the Champions Classic, 7 o'clock ESPN. Paul, what are we going to do? 2 VCasts? We're going to split this up? We'll have to wait and see. We'll see what happens. Want to talk football first or basketball?
Let's do basketball. You just said
basketball. All right. So Michigan State coming off the Gonzaga game. Izzo was over here at the press conference today. Izzo said he liked the way Michigan State competed. He felt, of course, Michigan State could have won the game, but down the stretch he was impressed that Drew Timme, as an All-American, rose up and did his thing. Izzo didn't say it in words, but he gave Timme some credit for, doing some things here and there to draw fouls and also some crafty things he did to get some offensive rebounds. And Michigan State lost some war drill rebounding opportunities in that game, which ultimately hurt their chances to win that game against a good Gonzaga team.
I mean, I don't even know. They lost some rebounds, but if they go harder and they try to get those rebounds, there's still going to be fouls. I mean, it is what it is when you've got that guy. I think you look at that stretch for Michigan State. Where you had a lot of key guys on the bench. When you have Malik Hall and Mady Sissoko on the bench, you can say whatever you want about, hey, a 12-point lead is this, and they should have done that. But you've got those two guys on the bench, and all of a sudden you lose your rebounding. That's one of the things there's a lot of things that this Gonzaga team did well that in that environment didn't match up well with Michigan State. You can't shoot threes in that game, and Michigan State has got a guard-heavy lineup, so that's a problem. And Joey Hauser, the four-man, the stretch four, is negated almost completely. So Gonzaga is a team that does really good in transition, and then they've got a good inside game. That's how you have to win in that type of environment. And Michigan State did a really darn good job in getting back in transition defense. They did a good job on their own getting some transition offense. They did a nice job getting into the lane. Hogarth did a nice job getting guys the ball in positions where they can make the plays inside the arc. And Michigan State did a lot of really good things until they ran out of talent because of foul trouble. And we've seen that a lot in some of these preseason games. We see it a lot in the Champions Classic, against Duke, for instance. Michigan State will be within 7 points or, maybe they'll lead for a little bit in the first half. Then a couple key guys get into foul trouble. And then what happens against Gonzaga happens against Duke and or Kentucky or Kansas or whomever Michigan State plays in the Champions Classic. That's part of the thing about this time of year. And I think one of the things that you look at with Tom Izzo, a lot of times I think his teams are underappreciated because everyone assumes that they're veteran-laden and they have no room for improvement. But you look at what Michigan State did, that they were an imperfect version of themselves because, to some extent, the conditions. And then, they're going to be playing indoors moving forward. But the big question in my mind against this Kentucky team is they're really long. So that perimeter shooting against a long, good defensive team that closes out, if that's what this Kentucky team is, that perimeter shooting that Michigan State will probably have an advantage with in Big Ten play is not going to come to bear in a game like this if you have really good defensive length. And Kentucky does have good athletes, good length. And I don't think Gonzaga was lacking. That Strother guy was he was legit. There's the McDonald's All-American that isn't very good on offense but has some length. But that was kind of like a C version of what they'll see from Kentucky. Everyone will have length, and then you've got good point guard play, veterans, leadership, and then the other thing is Oscar Tshiebwe. If he's like even 85%, his ability to offensive rebound is ridiculous. I can't think of a guy that offensive rebounds as good as him. Maybe since Montrezl Harrell.
I don't think anyone has in the college game.
But that's kind of like he's like maybe a better version of Montrezl Harrell.
Yeah.
So
I think Tshiebwe averages 6 offensive rebounds a game. Did Izzo say that, or did I hear that last night?
6.1. So I put it in my story. But sometimes when Izzo says a stat, it's not always that. It's close, but not
it's
quite.
Amplified to make his point.
Right.
You got to put
bottom line
filter.
is the guy can rebound the heck out of the ball, and Michigan State's going to have issues with that if guards aren't rebounding. And it's not a surprise to me that Izzo was talking about having needing guards to rebound and. and that's going to be a theme all year long. I don't think they're going to be able to get it from Jaden Akins quite yet, because I think he wants to, and I think he's working towards that. But I don't see him flying around in there in traffic the way he has in the past, and I think he's been discouraged to do so. Maybe it changes in this game. I don't know. Izzo mentioned Pierre Brooks, how he's got the body to do it. We've heard that about a lot of guys in a lot of years, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Maybe Pierre Brooks gets there by the end of the year, but not in this game.
He has the ability to do it, but how many minutes is he going to play realistically? It's not like Pierre Brooks is going to be playing 30 minutes a game.
Right.
Akins coming back will be taking some of those minutes. And Akins coming off that injury, does he go kamikaze for those things and just fly through the air with fearlessness? That's to your point,
No, because
right?
I think there's been times, like even in the first game back against Northern Arizona, he really went for a contested rebound on the baseline. He went way up. And it was in traffic, and he got bumped pretty good. And Izzo, took him aside and, hey, like, we're not doing that right now. So I don't know how you can go from that mode of being, cautious, and say, hey, oh, by the way, cut it loose. Now, Jaden Akins is a different kind of dude, and he's wired different. But I don't care what your mindset is when you're coming back from injury. It's a process. It's a process of gradually gaining confidence in yourself and your ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Xavier Henderson in football, the first 2 or 3 hits he had coming back from the safety were not good hits, and and he had acknowledged as much. It's like you just got to get back into the flow of it. And Jaden Akins hasn't been in the flow of that physical banging grind for almost 2 months,
right?
And it's going to take a couple more weeks, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I was watching Calipari, a couple of his post-game press conferences after Duquesne and after Howard, and getting ready for Michigan State. After the Duquesne game, he says, hey, Michigan State, they're going to come in, and they're going to battle on the board. So Kentucky's going to be putting even more emphasis on that. And when Izzo's talking about the guard rebounding and gang rebounding, as he says, Akins and Pierre Brooks are 2 guys that have the physical ability to do it. And the reason that becomes important is because when you're going against somebody like Shibwe, and we've seen Izzo coach it in the past, Antonio Smith was a great rebounder, but he going way back, but it's not like he had great rebounding numbers, but he would just flat out erase somebody. You are not getting a rebound against Antonio Smith, and he would just erase the guy. Sometimes you'd box out chest to chest and erase him, and then Morris Peterson or Jason Richardson would get rebounds. Maybe not Richardson, they didn't play together. He was a freshman, he was a senior, or he was a freshman the following year. But Peterson, David Thomas, those type of guys would get, Charlie Bell would get guard rebounds because Smith was erasing people. Against Shibwe, I guess your only hope is going to have Sissoko try to erase him if he can, and not go over the back if he can. So if Sissoko is good enough to keep him to 2 offensive rebounds on the night, which would be sensational. Then the guards have to come in, and that's where you need your guards to rebound.
I mean, it all depends on how many minutes can Sissoko play, right? So you're talking about Sissoko might hold him to 2 offensive rebounds on the night, but whom else is going to be out there? You know what I'm saying? So but
Shibwe has been injured. So how many minutes is he going to play? One thing about Sissoko that I was impressed with is he didn't fatigue. A lot of times, remember how Bingham could only play X number of minutes.
I felt like in the second half, he wasn't quite as active, and maybe
the fouls.
Maybe that was because of the fouls,
and they didn't run as much screen roll or short roll to him like he was doing a great job with that in the first half. So it changed a little bit.
But the other thing too is we're not, Kentucky's not a one horse team as far as rebounding. You look at the Toppin dude. I don't remember his first name, but Toppin has started each of the last 2 games for them. And he's averaged 9.5 rebounds in each of those games. Now it's against a different type of opponent, and they're not, that good. But like you were just saying, everybody comes cycling up for Michigan State because Michigan State's program brand is built on rebounding and defense, and Michigan State hasn't been a Michigan State rebounding team since Xavier Tillman was here.
And Kentucky will be fired up. It's their first red letter game. Michigan State's already had one. The other thing about Kentucky, they played an international series in August, I think in Europe or something. So, I mean, for a team that has new pieces coming in, it's not like it's in some ways it's their first red letter game, but it'll be their 3rd regular season game. But all the development they did in August, it's going to help that team. Plus, like Izzo was saying today, it's the most veteran team Izzo has seen. Izzo is very complimentary of his viewpoint of Kentucky. You can see that here on the YouTube channel.
There is a chance that it'll be a little bit janky from a Kentucky standpoint because Wheeler, the point guard, he came back 1 game, so they're a little bit different than Shibwe coming back. It might be a little bit. It might take a little bit of time to get them used. If Shibwe is playing 30 minutes, that's where you kind of get into some comfort things because he hasn't been playing for a little bit. So that's where if you're Kentucky, you kind of, you want the guy to play as many minutes as he can. But, like with Michigan State with Akins, if Akins had come in and played 30 minutes right away, it would have been a problem. Michigan State wouldn't have looked as good as they did against Gonzaga. They wouldn't have looked as good as they did against Northern Arizona. So there are some issues with guys coming back into the lineup. But my belief is that, Cal, he doesn't kind of wait till they're kind of ready. He waits till they're ready. Otherwise, he wouldn't. The Wheeler kid played 27 minutes the other night in his first game back. And I don't think you play a dude against an overmatched opponent 27 minutes unless he's really legit ready to go.
And Severe Wheeler, about a 5'10" point guard, was all SEC last year. Like Izzo says, he's a distributor and a really good defensive player. Shibwe, in case you don't know, if you're a casual basketball fan, that's Oscar Shibwe, National Player of the Year last year, senior, coming back, transfer from West Virginia, averaged 15 rebounds last year, 19 points. Just a destructive force. I haven't seen anyone like him in college basketball. And in the NIL era, he stays. And he's getting paid well, I'm sure, more than he would have maybe if he'd gone pro, probably, I assume. So it's good that college basketball has him. Michigan State's going to be taking on Shibwe one game after taking on Timmy, the two best college basketball players in the country. Matty Sissoko's the responsible for guarding both of them. So in terms of his, Sissoko being a first-year starter, he'd been a bit player for 2 years. First has to stay out of foul trouble. They worked on that all in the preseason, and he was good with it in the first half against Gonzaga. Second half, a touch foul early, and then got in foul trouble after that. So in terms of, it's not a dry run, but in terms of baptism by fire, right out of the chute, Sissoko looked pretty good first time around. One of the most improved players in the Big Ten, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and I haven't even seen the Big Ten yet, but he's got to be.
No, absolutely, and that's a huge thing for Michigan State. I mean, when you saw what he did against Gonzaga, the ceiling went way up because it's not just the defense, it's the rebounding.
Yeah.
The way he rebounds with two hands. It's not like a roller coaster ride. He gets good rebounds. Defensive anticipation is way better. A lot of really good things. So that's really positive. And then those two freshmen, Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper, are going to get better over the course of the year. It was good, in my opinion, that Jackson Kohler didn't have to play more than 11 minutes. Because things tend to get dicey in those type of games. And he's got stuff that he can work on, obviously, and he has to get better. But it's nice that it's not just him, like it was in 2016 with Nick Ward. Where there's all those injuries, and it was just Nick Ward or no one else. And Kohler's not ready for that.
No, Kohler. When he was guarding Timmy, when Kohler was in there against him, Timmy, it was like a bull to a red cape. When he saw Kohler guarding him, he went to work on him, and Kohler tried, but. Like Izzo said today, when he looks back at Xavier Tillman and Draymond Green, when they were first-year players, first-game players, they weren't playing 11 minutes; they're playing 1 minute. So, and not against the best player in the country.
Those guys were on scout team for most of the year, their freshman year, and then they finally got, Draymond Green made kind of his cracked in the lineup 10 minutes a game during big-time play. Same thing along those same lines with Xavier Tillman. And that's a lot easier than just getting thrown into the fire, as you said.
Yeah, and Kohler. Izzo was complimentary of Kohler today, saying he's been playing better in practice lately. Up and down the court, he's not what Michigan State usually wants at the center position in terms of running in transition. The lateral movement is a concern. Izzo says they want to get him involved more offensively, just to try to operate strength to maybe offset his weakness at the other end. We'll see. I don't know if this will be a great opponent to do that against, because not only do they have Shibwe in there, but Onyenso, a 6'11" freshman, kid from Nigeria that played with one of the prep schools out east. But they've been really high on him and how he's played out the shoot too. So he comes off the bench. Had 3 or 4 block shots in the first 2 games. Hey, they're Kentucky. They're talented. They always are. But Izzo was raving about they have seniors now. Shibwe's a senior. The kid that transferred from Rhode Island is a senior, Toppin. And, then you throw in C.J. Frederick, transferred in from Iowa. Frederick is, like a 46% career three-point shooter.
The Reeves guy that's led him in srederick too.
And Reeves is a senior from, Illinois State.
And both those guys, Frederick and Reeves, are shooting over 50% from 3 in the first 2 games. Frederick is a 50% from 3 shooter in his career at Iowa. So, Michigan State's got its handful, because lots of times we've seen Kentucky teams that are really good and really long on defense, and they don't score the ball very well. So you can stick around. But if you've got a team that's got a distributor, like they have in Wheeler, you've got some shooting, you've got great length, rebounding.
It's kind of all you need.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not any holes in this Kentucky team. Now, that doesn't mean Michigan State can't put its best foot forward. And I think one of the things, the biggest thing I'm looking at is, can Michigan State's, they've got the guards, they got the smaller guards that line up. Can they get production with those guys against that length? And you'll know right away, I think within the first 10 minutes, some of these games, like with that kind of length, within the first 10 minutes what kind of night it's going to be. It's really hard to adjust to that if you're getting, if you're getting shut down.
Mm-hmm. And Michigan State will they'll scrap around and they'll run some good stuff and they'll get some shots. You know how that is. Defensive rebounding, which has always been a Michigan State staple. We talked about it earlier. When you look at the numbers against Gonzaga in the second half was 13 out of 26, 50%. So they missed 13 shots. According to the stat sheet, Gonzaga had offensive rebounds on 9 of the 13 misses. 9 of the 13 misses, offensive rebounds for Gonzaga. Timmy was crafty with some of that.
But Timmy's not a great rebounder either.
But he had his little.
I get what he had, and I get it how that happened. But the bottom line is, you can get away with that when you don't have, if you get Malik Hall out there, you have Monty Sissoko out there. It's a lot harder to get away with that because you've got guys going after it. And I think Michigan State's got a lot to work with on this team. I think that they're in a good place. I don't know what's going to happen against Kentucky. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they gave Kentucky a game the way they gave Gonzaga a game, but who knows?
Right.
These guys have to have some confidence coming off that performance against Gonzaga.
And these Kentucky players, there is a lot of competition for playing time because Calipari doesn't want to play 11 players per game. He did that a few years ago. He wasn't happy with how it turned out. He can go 11 deep, but he's going to go 8 deep. Like last year. Who was it? Lance Ware. He was the number 36 player in the country coming out of high school, 6 minutes a game last year. Collins and Toppin they're competing for playing time. And Collins is a sophomore. He was the number 19 player in the country a couple of years ago. And, he averaged 2 points per game last year. So, the competition for playing time within their roster is extreme.
Right.
So, the effort is going to be extreme regardless of who they're playing. Of course, they'll get fired up to play Michigan State. But, I've not watched – I watched some of the Kentucky-Duquesne game. I've not watched enough of it. Of course, Sheboy was not out there, and Wheeler was coming off the bench. But I just watched the beginning, and it's just the beginning. But, they're not completely glued together yet. So it's not like they're going to be the best version of themselves. They'll throw all that talent at the rim and have the shooters and everything. So there's a chance that they might be a little unstapled at this point. So Michigan State has to hope that they have their stuff stapled.
Well,
together.
they better hope that Kentucky's not very good in transition defense.
And
you got to get defensive rebounds to do that.
Yeah,
so.
And like Izzo made a good point about Calipari. He says, on the down low, what he's always been impressed with Calipari's team is the defense. And that's one way you get on the court and stay on the court. And they play good defense because it's so competitive for minutes there. And this year they happen to be, they got a bunch of guys that are 22 years old, which is different. So, and they're coming off a year in which it was a big disappointment for them. Who'd they lose to? St. Peter's in the first round at the tournament last year. So they're hungry. They have something to improve. And they got some interesting things on campus there between internal rivalries in that athletic department. But it's always fun to watch Michigan State play Kentucky, two great programs, respectful of one another. It'll be fun to watch that down there at Indianapolis. You agree, Paul?
It's always good, man. I like the Champions Classic, regardless of what happens, is always great because it gives you a real true barometer of what you are as a basketball team. It's a lot better watching them play games like this than watching them play games against the teams that get paid to get beat.
Yeah. And it's good to Michigan State for their brand that they are on these showcase games. The Gonzaga game was the basketball game of the weekend last weekekend. Now they're part of the big stage in week 2.
To throw this out there before we sign off, you think back the last time Michigan State played on the aircraft carrier. That was another season with a brutal schedule, and Michigan State. They took some lumps in that schedule, and they found a way to win the Big Ten championship, tie for it in the regular season, 3-way tie, and then they won the Big Ten tournament.
Became a number 1 seed when they were unranked, I think, going into the season.
Right. So
but the first glimpse that they were pretty good was on that aircraft carrier.
Yeah, and they were great on that. They were down, and
they scrapped.
That North Carolina team wasn't like a great North Carolina team.
They were ranked 1 or 2 at the time.
They were. But they didn't end up being a great North Carolina team, but they were good. And but Michigan State got better, and they got better and better over the course of the season. I think this team really, in a lot of ways, they have maybe more. They definitely have more guard depth. And, now it's going to come down to big man development and staying healthy in the front court. But I like where Michigan State is at right now. And regardless of what happens, regardless of what happens on Tuesday night, I'll still like where they're at. I can see a scenario happening like what happened against Baylor last year in that tournament where Michigan State played strong for a half and then got blown out. But I still liked what I saw in that game for the most part. So, don't panic if they get blown out, and be pleasantly surprised if they give Kentucky a game, in my opinion.
And for Michigan State, a lot of it comes down to how are you improving from game to game. And the big man position, everybody knows, is a situation, and how Kohler and Carson Cooper, the two freshmen, come around is going to be key, because otherwise they are a little bit of foul trouble away from getting in trouble against anybody until and unless those guys can make some strides. I can't guarantee they'll make strides. That'll be an important X factor moving forward, those two guys, and whether they can help Sissoko and provide some depth in there to become a little bit more foul-proof against going off a cliff against some teams.
Yeah, and let's be honest about it. When it comes to big men, it's not like a straight curve of improvement. It's like an ebb and flow. It's up and down, up and down. It's a roller coaster, and then eventually, sometimes they just break through, and it's about staying with it, incremental improvement. All those guys coming in, except for maybe 1 or 2 a year, are projects to some extent.
Yeah.
And these guys just need to keep working, keep on getting better and practicing well, and it will come.
Now, after the game, Izzo was asked about Carson Cooper and whether he thought about playing him, and Izzo was upset about it and barked at the questioner, not because he was upset at the question, but he's upset at Carson Cooper. And we don't know what happened, but Izzo made the decision before the game that freshman was not going to play. And Carson Cooper, an underrated recruit that they're very happy to have, because he's got live legs, he's a quick jumper.
He can rebound.
Yeah. Do you think he would have played if whatever happened? People are making.
Listen, I wrote about this beforehand, like in the 3-2-1 before the game or whatever. I predicted it. After the Northern Arizona game, I predicted that Carson Cooper played more minutes than Jackson Kohler. The reason I did that is because of simply length and rebounding.
And he's got better lateral movement than Kohler. And they needed someone to go in there and play when there was foul trouble on Hauser, foul trouble on Hall, foul trouble with Sissoko, and Kohler was struggling. So he was the next guy that was going to give a shot. But I don't know if he was late to a meeting or what. But Izzo,
whatever the case is,
go ahead.
Izzo as well as I do, like the lessons that you learn through these type of things. Like obviously, it probably hurt Carson. I know it hurt Carson Cooper not being able to play in that game because of whatever poor decision making or whatever it was. And he's not a bad kid; he's a really good kid. So
that's Izzo issuing discipline.
But that's more important. Izzo can take a 1-point loss against a great team and teach a lesson. Yeah. That's where a lot of fans don't. Fans think of only winning, but it's more than that. It's like it's the lessons and you want to win, obviously, but the lessons that you learn right now, if you take them to heart and you grow, are the reason why you advance in March.
Izzo's not going to go soft on an important factor, even if it helps them beat Gonzaga. He'd love to win, but long run, hey, Cooper, we need you, and you screwed something up, and you hurt the team. You're a freshman here, but homie, don't play that.
We've seen in the past where it has hurt Michigan State, where guys have gotten away. Not gotten away, but they've been treated with kid gloves. I think like Corey Lucius, Chris Allen, Darrell Summers. Those guys didn't have it all buttoned down, and it showed. And you can't do that.
So Izzo being Izzo, and it's a long-term play, and Carson Cooper is going to be a straighter soldier going forward.
Yeah.
So might have hurt their chances of winning that game. But anyway, State's back at it Tuesday night in Indianapolis. We'll be down there. Michigan State basketball season hitting full gear, and it's going to be fun for Paul Konyndyk. Jim Comparoni been watching the VCast from East Lansing with the Spartans for SpartanMag.com.